Hello, everybody. I'm very pleased to receive you here today and to introduce Dr. Georgina Flores, who is visiting us from the Institute for Social Research in Mexico at UNAM. And she teaches in the postgraduate program in Political and Social Sciences and Music at UNAM. She has carried out research projects related to identity construction and musical tradition in indigenous and rural communities in Mexico. Her research interests include critical studies of heritage, the construction of cultural identities through music, and citizen participation in cultural policies. She has published books, book chapters, and journal articles on these subjects, as well as coordinating recordings of traditional music and dances in Mexico. We're very, very pleased to have you, and I'm very, very curious to learn about this musical form called the Pirekua.
Okay, thank
Welcome.
you very much.
Okay,
thank you. Good afternoon. I'm very pleased to be here at the Center for Mexican Studies. And I would like to thank Ana Elena to the kind invitation. And well, I will try to introduce to this complex culture of the music with the Purépecha people and indigenous people in Mexico. And I'm happy to share with you some of the results of my research that I've been carrying out since 2013. And well, I will start this talk with a very brief description of the geographical and demographic aspects of the Purépecha. Then I will describe an historical approximation about the music in the pre-Hispanic Purépecha society to show you the importance of this music, or the music in this society. And then I will describe some cultural and musical aspects to characterize the Pirekua song. And I will show you some different examples of the music. And I will conclude this talk with by discussing the Pirekua, by discussing the nomination of the Pirekua by the UNESCO as cultural heritage. So I will talk about the process and some of its effects. So I think we can. I will start with the presentation, but if there is any doubt, I can stop and you can ask, or at the end, how do you?
As you wish.
As you wish. Okay. So I will do it like this. Okay. Well, this is this is Mexico, and we have here the Purépecha territory of the in this region, in the state of Michoacán. There are 4 regions that characterize the Purépecha territory. Well, the largest, the Purépecha indigenous people is the largest of the indigenous group in the region. They have 6,000 kilometers of territory at a height that ranges from 1,600 to 2,600 meters in a neovolcanic area, and 165 communities recognized as Purépecha, but only a quarter still use the Purépecha language. It's indigenous people, a very migrant indigenous people, and they started the migration to the USA at 1940s and continue until today. So, well, Purépecha territory is divided in 4 regions. Each one is represented by a color in their flag. This represents the different ecosystems of each of one. One of the main or the well recognized of this region are the lake, that the word is Japondaru in Purépecha. The lake region contains some of the biggest lakes in the country. Pátzcuaro Lake is a mythical place of the Purépecha, and but now suffers from contamination of its waters as well as drying out process. The other region is the Meseta. The word in Purépecha is Waterloo. The Meseta is the largest of the 4 regions and contains many volcanoes, some of them active, like the Pirekuas, the youngest volcano in the Americas, which was born when it erupted in 1943. The Meseta is a forested region, but during the last 15 years, it has suffered severe deforestation due to the expansion of avocado plantation, as you can see in this photograph. Well, the third region is Cañada de los 11 Pueblos, and the word is in Purépecha is Eraxamani. This is a valley. The Cañada is a valley. It's located to the north of the Sierra. For many years, the production of handcrafts has been an important economic activity in the region. More recently, plantations of berries have started to dominate the local economy, and frequently the local Purépecha people are contracted to work for the berry producing companies. So you can see here some of the plantations and a huge strawberry in the photo. And the last one is Ciróndaru, is La Ciénega de Zacapu. La Ciénega is in the north of Michoacán, and this former wetland has been drained since the end of the 19th century, and very few people speak the Purépecha language in this region. So we have a very few pireris, singers, in this region. Most of the singers are in the lake and in the meseta or sierra. Well, a good place to start to talking about Purépecha music is the Relación de Michoacán. This book, written in early colonial period by Jerónimo de Alcalá, around 1540, describes the way of life of the Purépecha, and it's an important reference to understand the pre-Hispanic past of the Purépecha people. The illustration of the book show a series of events in the history of the Purépecha before the arrival of the Spaniards, as well as scenes from everyday life. A few images clearly show representations of musical instruments. Well, this illustration is called The Fisherman, and shows a man fishing with these butterfly nets that you can see now only in touristic scenes, no? in touristic moments. But we can see the very ancient of this way of life in the lake. Well, we have here, for example, in this picture, we can see the funerary ritual of a high-ranking authority figure. Here we have this person with a blue face to differentiate from the others, and we can here have some musical instruments like shells, seashells, and another kind of de aliento, instrumentos de aliento.
Wind instruments.
Wind instruments, yes. Another example of the instruments is the Pirekua, that we can traduce as rounded thing that makes sound. And well, the Pirekua is a cylindric wooden percussion instrument, today only found in a few communities like Awera. Here we have this instrument with head of a cow or a bull, we don't know really. And it's just played in ritual moments like carnivals or the patron saint ceremonies. Well, the Pirekua has a strong relation with the ancestral oral tradition. Here in this illustration, we have the Petamuti, that he was a principal priest, and he has the function to narrate the mythical story about some important person, important government or authorities, like Ireti Tikateme, and Petamuti narrates each year in the festivity of the arrows. So this oral tradition, some Purépecha academic thinks that Pirekua could be related, because the Pirekua is a kind of oral tradition to narrate some different stories or events. For example, well, the Pirekua, when some Purépecha academics consider this lyric and musical practice, is related with the Huatapiecha, a kind of storytellers of the ancient ways of life of the Purépecha. Well, I have to say that this musical practice is a highly valued sign of identity in the communities, in the rural communities. So in this photograph, we can see Tata Ismael Bautista here with the guitar, and another pireri that is they sing in duets in front of a family that they are, you can see, is they are recording the song, the Pirekua, and this photo was made in the 80s. Well, the term of Pirekua, well, the word Pirekua was first recorded in the 16th century in the dictionary of the Michoacán language of Matutino Gilberti, a Franciscan monk. The word can be translated simply as song, but some Purépecha academics translate it as palabra en canto, or the word enchant. The pireri is a person, man or woman, who composes and sings Pirekuas and who can play or not an accompanying instrument. Okay. Well, the Pirekua or Pirekuas are part of the rural life in the communities, like other kinds of traditional music. There are specific moments in the community life when the Pirekua can be heard. It is important to mention that the Pirekua is not in any way a form of religious music. Some of the most important moments when Pirekuas are performed include weddings and other social festivities. For example, the community competitions. These are normally carried out in the days previous to festivity of patron saints. We will see some examples later. Until quite recently, it was very common to hear Pirekuas on street corners in the afternoon or evening. This practice is less common today. So we will listen Tata Vicente from this is a community in Comachuen, and I could record this Pirekua just in a wedding. But it's not very easy to record him. So it was a very, I was lucky to do it. So I will show you. This is a spontaneous singing. I will leave this here. As you can see, the people start to sitting around the singers, and well, this is one of the most important social function of the Pirekuas, to singing and to listen. And children and the old people can convive. They can spend the time together, listening the story. In this case, about Male Oralia, is Oralia, our love Oralia, nuestra querida Oralia. I will talk more later about the lyrics. Okay. So, well, the instruments. The Pirekua can be sung on a company, but is most valued when it's accompanied by the 6-string guitar or a guitar along with a requinto. It can also be sung together with trios, quartets or quintets, where we find guitars and the requinto and double bass. I have an example of a duet like we see in the other Pirekua, but these pireris are from the lake region, and this is in a context of for tourists. So you will see the different environment. You will see the different feeling in this practice. Okay. Well, we have trios, quartets, and quintets, where we can listen guitar, requinto, and double bass, like here in the photo. And I will show you an example of this kind of group. Well, this is, I record this one in a house. This is with a rehearsal. They are young, and they were to play in the night for a festivity, so they are practicing in the house. Well, their parents are pireris, so this is a very good group of pireris. Well, they have bands and orchestras, but I think they sound very good in like a pireris. We will see another example of their parents. Okay. So, well, the rhythms. Two important rhythms can be identified in traditional Purépecha music. The sonecito in 3/4 time is fairly slow. Its name in Purépecha is Guananscucua, that it means music for walking in procession. And in this photograph, we can see this. There are not pireris; they are musicians from our orchestra. And here we can see how with the cello, the man with the cello, he's walking with the instrument, and they are behind of the saint patron. And well, the other rhythm is the abajeño. It's 6/8 time, energetic, fast rhythm associated with euphoric moods, happiness, and liberation. The Pirekua that we listened with the three young boys was an abajeño. Well, this rhythm tries to animate the audience to dance, and its name in Purépecha is Warucua, that means agitated. Okay, so let's see one of these kind of rhythm and the competitions. Like here. Well, competitions are the most important performance for the pireris because they fight musically thinking between another pireris or agrupations or groups of music, and they play in the day before the festivity. So there's a lot of alcohol, and there's a lot of young men. Well, they just you will listen how they scream and ask for the pireris. You have to sing very well, and they threw some bottles to them. So it was very it's an important moment for them to be recognized. This is at 1 o'clock in the morning. A very cold night. So that we went a lot to this village. I will leave this here, but you are invited to go to one festivity in the communities. Would you like to drink tequila? Well, the canonical definition of the pireri is the person who composes, sings, and plays his or her own pirekuas. But an interpreter can also be considered a pireri. We also find anonymous composers who ask other pireris to sing their pirekuas. In this case, they prefer not to be identified or even recognized in public. The number of Pirekuas composed by one pireri can vary from half a dozen up to around 3,000, as in the case of Tata Luis Zacarias, that we can listen an example of him. And you will see the difference with the other agrupations, with the other groups. This is in the radio, in indigenous radio in Cherán, in the meseta.
Margarito no repite. Ai, que isso para aqui, já se sostiene com Guanaca, Mamara Suzuki, Bangushati. Tanya Tsukura, Tineta Kursan, Sashi Margarito Nurapiti.
Well, a pireri can also compose other kind of Purépecha music. A significant number participate in church singing, including playing or composing masses in Purépecha language, like Tatahualdino Ceguera. And, well, you can see here one photo. They are singing in the church on Sundays after to drink all night on Saturdays. Well, it's a kind of una ofrenda. It's a kind of offering to Christ or the Virgin. Well, the lyrics, the lyrical content of Pirekuas is very wide. Songs may talk about romantic relationships. Women are compared with flowers. Natural features including flowers, animals, and lakes, or mountains, or volcanoes. They may also refer to social or environmental problems in the communities. Well, the Pirekua should be in Purépecha language, always. But some words in Spanish can be used. We will listen to an example of these brothers from Syria. tell you that I don't speak Purépecha, so this is one of, it's a shame. So I asked him, what does he mean, this lyric?
Sí, ¿de qué habla esta Pirekua?
Esta Pirekua se habla de noviazgo, pues. Es un joven que ya han dado en muchas comunidades y con ese gusto, porque es soltero, es libre para hablar ahí a la muchacha, cualquier muchacha, pues, agarrarle la mano, porque es por sí libre, pues, nadie le va a impedir algo así. Entonces dice, escuche, mira, le quiero cantar pues a la muchacha. Y luego dice, mi guitarra así suena, y mi guitarra así suena, y
quisiera llorar,
quisiera llorar, como que quisiera llorar,
pero no lloro más,
pues no lloro más, me acuerdo de ti, y finalmente dice, le voy a dejar, te dejo esta pirekua, este sonecito, para que te acuerdes de mí. Y no me despido, sino hasta muy pronto. Eso es lo que él habla de la pirekua. Habla de un muchacho que es soltero y es libre. Platica con cualquier muchacha y todo eso, pues.
Ajá. Sí, ¿de qué habla esta Pirekua?
Impossible love. Do you want a translation of this?
Yes, please.
Yes, please. Okay. Nick, can you
Well,
read?
basically, the song is about a young man, an unmarried man, who likes to sort of travel around between the communities, visiting different villages, and meeting as many young women as he can. It's his hobby almost. And it kind of narrates one particular episode where he meets this young lady that he really likes, and he decides to dedicate a song to her, and he talks about how his guitar is almost kind of weeping with his passion, and then eventually he says something like, well, I'll be back very soon, so I won't really say goodbye, and I'll leave you this Pirekua as a sign of my
You will remind me
interest, so
with
you'll
this
remember
song.
me. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, women, although relatively few, an important role in this musical tradition is played by women. They often sing at home in domestic spaces, but some are well recognized in the four regions as very good pireris, like Nana Paulina, and she has a recorder. Well, they can compose, sing, and play different instruments like guitar or the double bass. And I want to show you one example of Nana Graciela. She's the mother of the three young that we saw before. So they have a very good teacher. Mm-hmm. And I recorded this well, the brass band it's behind, so it's not a very good sound, but we can hear her singing. Well, I should to register very quickly because she started to sing and I put my recorder. So, well, she's Nana Graciela from Pirekuas. And, well, children. Many pireris begin their musical activities as pireris from childhood, around 11 years old. Some of them are only interpreters, and some of them are composers too, like Miguel Angel. He is from San Lorenzo community. This one is a Pirekua of him. Well, he composes this Pirekua, and he's his grandfather. He teaches him. In November 2010, the Pirekua was nominated Intangible Cultural Heritage by the UNESCO, and this was celebrated by political authorities, but causes surprise and angry between some pireri groups. They had not been informed and consulted, as Mexican and international law specifies. And they, this happened not only in Mexico, this happened in other countries too, and in another nominations in Mexico. But the difference here is that the Purépecha musicians and singers, they formulated a complaint with the Musical and Human Rights Commission. So it started a political conflict with the musicians and the music and the pireris. What happened here is, the commercialization of the Pirekua in a context of increasing tourism, and the pireris are displaced by well-positioned folklore groups who receive most of the economic and social benefits. And the Pirekua has been moved from their community context, as I talked to you, and neither the safeguarding plan has been carried out until now. Well, this is a huge problem now there, and they are fighting to have a well-recognized of their community interest in this song, and not commercial interest in this cultural practice, because they say the Pirekuas are a way of life for the Purépecha in the Purépecha communities. So they want this cultural practice keeps in the way of life of the Purépecha, not to make money or for tourism. Well, I want to conclude my presentation with testimony of one of pireri, a musician from Aguirre, that he said, Pirekua should be encouraged more amongst the young people in childhood because it is a precious treasure that we have here in the 4 regions. The Pirekua is a treasure and we feel proud of it. So, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Georgina, for a wonderful introduction to what is very clearly a very rich and complex world.
Yes.
And I wonder if any of you have any questions or comments?
I would like to make a question about the young children and the teenagers that are pireris. Do they speak the language, the Purépecha, and they also sing, or it's just that they sing and don't speak them?
The language is one of the main worries in the Purépecha communities because only, as I said in the beginning, only a quarter of the 165 talks in Purépecha. The examples that I show you, all of them speaks in Purépecha, and the young, or the teenagers that cannot speak, well, they only can sing the Pirekuas of the others, so they cannot compose. So it's hard, but the Pirekuas, I think, is the most important now in this moment. Is the most important tool to learn the Purépecha language, because they don't have TV in Purépecha. The radio sometimes is in Purépecha and another in Spanish, but the Pirekuas are the main in the communities. Is the main tool to learn the language, even for us like mestizos. Yes.
And what about the composition? Is it written or is it just by memory? How can you tell that this composer had 3,000?
I also want to piggyback on that question. On one slide, I did see someone did write down some of the notes, but I guess it's more something which someone will listen and then just learn by ear and then just sing.
Yes. Well, most of the pireris are peasants. And so the oral tradition is the most dominating in these composers. So they don't write, they don't know the musical language. Mm-hmm. Some of them know because they participate in brass band. And when they play in a brass band, they have to learn the solfeo, the notes, the notation, yes. The notation. But the pireri, that it's only a pireri, they only remember the music and remember the lyrics. I told you about the Luis Zacarias, that he has 3,000, but he has a notebook. Mm-hmm. He writes his Pirekuas, yeah. All of them. But I think most of them they remember only in all the time, because they practice in the afternoon after their work in the forest or in the lake. They start to sing, so it's a very good way to keep in the memory.
And then a different kind of question, which is ties in with that, does in that region as well exist family who are actually passing down to the next generation their songs, which maybe the previous generation have sung, or that doesn't really take place? So in other culture, you do have that quite a lot with indigenous people, which passing on the certain songs, or is it just something more to interpret and compose as and when of the time they live, and then it's kind of almost forgotten, and then something fresh comes? Or
well, I will try to answer you because it's very complex. Some families transmit their Pirekuas to the next generation. But and some Pirekuas are very popular in all of the 4 regions, and even outside of the regions, like in the Mexico City, we know Flor de Canela, or Josefinita is another well-recognized Pirekua. But one of the main or interesting thing in the Pirekua is that you have to compose a new one every day, or a new one when you are going to be in a public scenery. So it's well recognized is that when you compose the new one, not to repeat all the older. So they are always trying to compose every day. So now they are composing 50 or 100 Pirekuas in this moment, because they see some events in the communities and they start to create the lyrics like a newspaper.
Yeah.
Something happened, now we have to talk about this. You know? Yes, but there are some very well-known Pirekuas, and they stay there since 40s or 15 decades.
And then you have hinted towards once there was a radio station, a local one, and it appears like they have an opportunity somehow, sometimes to interpret or to present some of their Pirekwas, whatever, I can probably not even pronounce properly the word, but actually in the local radio station, and so that will be only purely played in those particular region which stretches those 4 segregated.
It's very localized, the musical practice. Well, it's very unknown in Mexico, in all of the country, because we cannot listen the Pirekuas in the radio, in the massive mass media.
Yeah, it was another question.
Only in the local radio of the indigenous radio, Xepur in Charan, is a community where we can listen, and when you arrive to the Sierra or to the Cañada, some of the regions, they are listening the radio, the local radio, and they are listening some Pirekuas, old or new one, because one another interesting thing is that they always record in CDs the music, and they sell it a very low price, 20 pesos, to get some.
That's less than a pound.
Yeah,
It's not a pound. It's because with this CD they can show how they play, so they can be contracted, hired by some families to play in a wedding or in a baptism or in another festivity. It's a kind of presentation of themselves. But I always came to my house with a lot of CDs because they gave me a lot of music. Yes.
About the competition that you mentioned, what are the criteria in order to decide which is the winner?
Oh, well, very good question. Very good question. Because in the context of the tourism, the government has been created a different competitions, but they have a jury with musicians from the schools, academic musicians, and the criteria are different. So they are, when they finish the competition, they are very angry with the jury. But in a community, they are not angry because it's the people. When you got a lot of scream, you listen, you are the winner. And nobody gets angry because it's democratic, you know? It's not a few persons that have decided around your practice, cultural practice, most of them mestizos and not Purépecha people. So they say, why are they juzgando, evaluating us? Because they don't know Purépecha language. But when they are playing in a community competition, it's different because the people know what they are saying, and they know the feeling of the Pirekua.
So it's actually judged by some who don't even understand actually the language itself as well in those competitions.
Sorry?
At the competition, they are judged by certain people who don't actually understand as well the language or. Okay.
Well, depend of the context. Yeah. For tourism, or
no, it was the lady how she was just saying with the competition.
In the community, the organizers are the community, are young people or mayordomos, mayordomías. Well,
it's difficult to translate.
Yes, well, the community institutions,
the mayo or something like that.
Yes, some groups. And competitions is it's a name, but it's not a real competition like we understand here. It's just to enjoy.
So I have another question, just very intrigued about them, very old for me. With the Pirekuas, so language itself, you have shown as well at the very beginning. There was, it seemed like a dictionary was written by one of the monks and so on. And I can't recall when that was actually written and so. But how progressed or how developed the whole language? I mean, has it stayed very much what has been sort of written down over the centuries and to the modern day of the 21st century? This was very interesting. How you hinted in one of your sentences, only a few words of Spanish are occasionally incorporated, but otherwise it appears to me it stays very true to the language itself. And I was just wondering whether it has kind of modernized me. I just don't know anything, the linguistic side of it. I was just intrigued if you can say something about this.
The language is a political thing because before the 80s, the Pirekuas was composed in Spanish, one part, and the other in Purépecha. But after the 80s, with the autonomy movement and the reivindication and the proud of to be an indigenous, they start to move the Spanish words from the Pirekuas. And some composers has been erased from their notebooks, the Spanish parts, and translated to Purépecha. Because now they are fighting for their autonomy, and now is a kind of a political tool to say we are here and we are keeping our language and our culture. That's one reason they put the complaint with the Human Rights Commission, because they say the government cannot have our culture for their own interest. They have to ask us. So the language is a very important now criteria to define a Pirekua. But maybe before the 80s, it doesn't matter too much if it was in Spanish or in Purépecha. I don't know if I answered you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And where does the language come from?
Well,
indigenous? Is it a mother tongue
It's
language?
very different from the other languages in the region. So we don't know exactly. Some say that came from South America. There are different theses around the language because it's very different. And Purépecha always fight against the Mexica Empire. And there are a few words in Nahuatl, but it keeps in its language is very close.
So it's not a mother culture like the Zapoteco culture, a mother
In the region?
In the region, yeah.
Well,
The
it's,
one of the original, the very.
well,
old.
the Purépecha was an empire in the region. So that's the way they fight against the Mexica empire. It's a huge area from the north of Mexico, Sinaloa, to the south, to the west, Michoacán and Guerrero. You can listen in Purépecha names of some communities. There are not anymore Purépecha, but the name is in Purépecha. Like Querétaro, for example, came from the Purépecha.
And what about musically? Are there similarities between the Pirekuas and other musical forms? Or not necessarily?
Well, in these days, they are fighting each other because the popular music has influenced a lot the way to sing the music because they like to sing baladas, romantic music, and this kind of or cumbias. So this kind of popular rhythms has displacing these two rhythms of the Purépecha traditional music. And well, the ethnomusicologists has been talk about that, and they say, well, it's a influence from the Spanish music because they have the guitar. But the Purépecha academics said, no, we have this rhythm before the Purépecha, the Spaniards came to Mexico. So it's another political discussion around it. But the thing is, but I very surprised that they keep these two rhythms in orchestras, in brass bands, and what else? And well, in the trios or another musical groups, but these two rhythms are very structure the society because they said we have two rhythms because we have two seasons, rainy and dry season. We have men and women, so they talk about the duality in the cosmovision, indigenous cosmovision. Yes.
Do they incorporate another pre-Hispanic instruments? Because most of them were the guitar,
Yes, the
but you said at the beginning that in the past they used seashell.
seashells and like teponaztli is another pre-Hispanic instrument, the guirincua that I showed you before. Oops, it's better to go. Well, I don't know very much about instruments, but this one is a percussion instrument. And used to be, or some ethnomusicologists said that used to be has a head of a iguana or crocodile. But now it has a cow head, so this it's a syncretic instrument. So they have changed it with the colonization, but they keep still in the carnivals, not for the Pirekua, it's different, in carnivals. And I when I talk with a friend of mine, he's an ethnomusicologist, and he told me that the monjas, the nuns try to keep away the instrument because it's a devil instrument. So they have been reduced the time of the use of this instrument in the religious festivity. So they still fighting against this vision of the devil and the bad things in the music. So this is a very a good example of the resistance of a culture and indigenous resistance. And there's not much studies around this. We have to say it. Only a few studies around.
And when you say that they complained about UNESCO's decision, how could they manage? Because they need to enter a legal code, they need to know about the law, they need to know that they can't even make the complaint. So that speaks of a necessary mixture of codes, or do they have lawyers? Or
Yes, well, Purépecha is one of the indigenous people with most professionists. Yes, so they have a lawyer. So she started with the process, and but my work starts here because I'm not an ethnomusicologist. I'm social psychologist, and I start to get into this problem to help them and to know what the UNESCO means in this kind of cultural policies. So I write a little book and gave them so they can know what does it mean to be in a representative list of the UNESCO conventions, because they don't know what is UNESCO and what does it mean that. So they get angry in around of this ignorance, no, about the institutional policies. So we start to give them different information about the conventions, about the cultural rights, and what they have to do with this nomination. Because everybody was happy, but nothing has changed for them. For the necessities in the communities are still the same, or even worse. And they always ask me, for example, when I go to the communities for instruments, they ask me for medicines, and things very prioridades, no?
Essential
things. So they say, what we are going to do with this nomination? What for? So we have to take this nomination to come back to a good way to get benefits for the musician and the pireris and their families.
And do they travel? Do they? I mean, at some point you mentioned that some musicians might be willing to travel, but I don't know how far that would be betraying the cause and singing out of context, or because it's a paradox, isn't it? You want people to know about it, but at the same time not to intrude on the beauty of it.
Yes. Well, they always ask me, "Oh, take us with you to Mexico City or another places," because for them it's a kind of to give. I think the thing is here is the point is who is representing who, and we have different folklorist groups that they are not playing the real music, if I can say like this. But they can go outside and talk about their own culture and talk about their music, their own music. So I think it's a good thing when we can do it in this way. For example, for academic moments or I don't know, to make a more democratic the expression of the music, and not to be still for another kind of groups.
What's the kind of supports that they receive from the government? I mean,
I suppose that there's many or some supports from the government.
For culture. Well, there are only a few programs, like programs for composers, but they have to compete with another kind of musician. It's a national program, so they don't have programs, specific programs for the pireris, and that's we are fighting for that, because the nomination in the UNESCO has to be traduced in programs or a different safeguarding plan that they can use it, but not fighting each other. Is in a kind of cooperation. Yes. So we have these national programs, we have indigenous programs, but they have to know to use a computer and fill the form, and most of them are peasants, so they need help to do it. I make a questionnaire, ask them around that programs, and the 90% answer me that they don't know anything about the cultural programs and policies. So we have a very huge inequality in these governmental policies. So we have a lot of work
We also go
to do, a lot, because all the institutions are in the cities, so they are not going to travel there. There's a lot of things around this that they cannot get the money or the support, scholarships, for example.
Anything else? No, join me. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.